seminary, I had started to do some reading, did some studies on works, righteousness, faith and works. Kind of the difference between the two, the historical kind of differences between Catholic and Protestants, and how those were all worked out. Maybe this was just this particular Presbyterian tradition, but what I started to find is a lot of work was being done on the Protestant side to really recognize that actually what the Catholics have been teaching, there's actually a lot of sense to it with regards to, if you look at the teachings of the church, the role of works in terms of our consent to the grace of God. That it is, a relationship of love, that it is framed within a relationship of love, that God is not out to make robots. He gives himself fully to us, but at the same time, to receive that gift of God, to receive God's gifts, requires a disposition on our part to actually, and a desire to receive them. That if we should not desire to receive, that the Lord is not going to force his hand upon us. And so I think that had already started to been worked out, like within the Protestant traditions and kind of churches and conversations we had been a part of. This whole thing was just completely dismantled for me in the Desert Fathers. Because, the Desert Fathers, you had both extremes of both the immensity and the infinite grace of God, that we can do nothing without Christ. On the other side of things, the call to dispose ourselves in such a way so that we might receive all that the Lord desires to give us. That was broken down for me very early on as a Protestant. We were reading these things and we were blown away by them. And so we desired ourselves. There's a whole kind of movement within, I think, Protestant evangelical Christianity on recovering the importance of spiritual disciplines, of liturgy, of really of entering into practices in the spiritual life that cultivate space within our hearts to receive the grace of the Lord that he so desires to give us. As we know as Catholics, that's something that the church has always held fast to, that it's not a competition between grace and works, that there is God's grace, which is always ever new, always there for us, always fresh, always overflowing. And yet on our side, there's this reality that our hearts are often hardened to that grace, and that there needs to be work to be done with the help of God to kind of break open our hearts, to break down our hearts, to receive, to capacitate ourselves to receive everything that the Lord desires to give us.